Good morning. Before we begin, we're going to have presentations from several of the speakers here on the dais. One of the things that I'll ask you is that at the end of their presentation, we're going to open up for questions for the media only. And again, I'll request that if you have cell phones, please put them on a silent mode or vibrate, not to interrupt the live cameras. Thank you. On behalf of Mayor de Blasio and Commissioner O'Neill, I welcome you to our year-end crime press conference here at the Brooklyn Museum. To my right, we have the Chief of Department, Carlos Gomez, Police Commissioner, Police Commissioner James O'Neill, the Mayor of the City of New York, the Honorable Bill de Blasio. To my left, the Chief of Detectives, Robert Boyce. The Chief of Crime Control Strategy, Dermot Shea. And the Borough President of Brooklyn, the Honorable Eric Adams. It's indeed now my pleasure to introduce the Police Commissioner of the City of New York, the Honorable James O'Neill.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here in Brooklyn. Thank you especially to the staff here at the Brooklyn Museum for opening their doors to us, specifically Ann Pasternak, the Museum Director, David Berliner, President of the Museum, Jim Kelly, Vice Director of Operations, and Tricia Ross, Director of Events. Thank you very much for inviting us here this morning. And thank you to all the community partners who took the time to join us and support us this morning, too. I know some of you came from very far distances from the Bronx, I think, right? That's a long way from Brooklyn. I think I see some people from Queens over there, too. You are the definition of what we're talking about when we say that fighting crime is a shared responsibility. You should take as much pride in our announcement today as we do. You help us every day in so many ways, from showing and introducing our newest cops around the neighborhoods they'll be patrolling, to gathering up other civic-minded residents and workers in your community so that they, like you, can work hand in hand with us in our mission to further reduce crime and to keep people safe. And that's why we're here today, of course, to talk about the year we've just completed. I'm going to speak for a couple of minutes, and then Mayor de Blasio will make some remarks, and then we'll get Chief Dermot Shea, I like saying that, Chief Dermot Shea, up here to talk about the actual numbers. Dermot is our Chief of Crime Control Strategies and runs our weekly CompStat meeting along with Chief Carlos Gomez, the Chief of Department. They meet every Thursday morning. I know everyone here had a chance to walk around and view the photo exhibit and hopefully talk to each other about the incredible changes our great city has experienced in the past 20 or 25 years. The thing to take away from all of this, that crime stats you'll hear about in a little bit, the before and after pictures you were just looking at, is that none of this happened by accident. A reduced number of murders yet again, and the absolute lowest number of shootings in New York City since modern record-keeping began. We're truly focused on people committing the crime. That's how we're keeping people safe year after year. And again, none of it happened by accident. As I look around at the faces this morning, I know many of you around in this city during the early 80s and 90s, when crime was at its peak, when murders topped 2,200 a year. And you couldn't tell what color the subway cars because they were all covered with graffiti. I remember that vividly. And I can tell you firsthand, it was a very different city back then. And I know you can tell us firsthand as well. So it wasn't an accident how it is that crime plummeted in New York City over the past 2 decades and continues to do so. It's because of the hard work of the men and women of the NYPD who patrol all of our neighbors day in and day out, and the community members who support us. It's the civilians that work for the NYPD, and it's the police executives that work tirelessly to help keep this city safe. Over the last year and a half, we've expanded our neighborhood policing plan, which is a crime-fighting model, first and foremost, as I've said before. Everything we do now is geared towards reducing crime and keeping people safe, everything. For our neighborhood coordination officers and the team of cops that work the same shift and work in the same sectors every day, it's now much more than just a traditional answering of 911 call. It's about deeper problem solving. Every one of us shares this responsibility. That's why we've redefined what it means to be a police officer in this great city. And that's why we've completely shifted the way we patrol New York. We've also restructured how the NYPD is organized. We have almost all of our investigators now reporting to Chief of Detectives Bob Boyce, who you'll also hear from in a little bit. With Bob's guidance and a lot of legwork by those under him, last year we conducted about 100 targeted takedowns, medium and long-term investigations into gang and crew violence, narcotic stealing, and other criminal activities, and we've locked up somewhere north of 1,000 people in these takedowns. That kind of precision policing is what's going to keep New York City on the right track. We've zeroed in on a relatively small population of people who commit most of the violent crime in our city. We're picking them off one by one, or in many cases dozens by dozens. And we're working with our 5 district attorneys and the U.S. attorneys, both the Eastern and Southern District, to make sure that this work pays off. And let me tell you, our DAs are truly our partners in this fight. We've pre-indicted many of these suspects prior to knocking on their doors very early in the morning, and through enhanced prosecutions, many of these repeat offenders are getting longer and more meaningful sentences. And we've added another facet to our neighborhood policing model. After each of these takedowns, we've been going back into the affected communities, neighborhoods, and the housing developments that were terrorized by drug dealers and people shooting guns. And we've held community meetings there with the people who live and work there, so they can ask questions about what our teams are doing here that morning, about exactly who we arrested and why. You know what we're overwhelmingly being told? You got the right people. We're also being told thank you. That's what this is all about. That's why we took these jobs. It's our job to fight crime and to keep people safe, and we won't let up on our efforts. There's still much work to be done. As we begin 2017, I just wish a Happy New Year to everyone. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Well done. Well, a very Happy New Year to everyone, and I want to just offer my congratulations to Commissioner Jimmy O'Neill, to all the men and women of the NYPD, and to all our community partners. This is an amazing moment for New York City. Let me just give you a sense of the records that have been broken, that have been shattered here once again in this city, because it's extraordinary. The year 2016, the fewest ever overall major crimes in New York City. The fewest ever shootings in New York City. First time we have been below 1,000 shootings in the modern era for a single year in this city. Absolutely amazing. And to give you perspective, just 25 years ago, there were over 5,000 shootings in a single year in this city. Look how far we have all come together. Another record, the fewest ever robberies in New York City. You can clap for that one, too. And finally, the fewest ever burglaries in New York City. This is extraordinary in comparison to that past. And this exhibit is so powerful. I urge everyone to really look at it, because it reminds us of all the work that went into changing things. It certainly goes back to Bill Bratton and Jack Maple and the origin of CompStat. At a time, we not only had the 5,000 shooting a year, we had over 2,000 murders a year. Real work went in over the last almost quarter century. Real work by our police officers, real work by our community partners to get us to this point. And now the NYPD is perfecting a strategy of precision policing, and in combination with neighborhood policing, crimes are being stopped before they happen, because the focus is on the right people and the right places, and the information is there coming from so many neighborhood residents who are working in deeper partnership with the NYPD. That combination of the right strategy, the right targeting, and the right information is proving to be essential. And you're seeing these gang takedowns, and you're also seeing more and more guns being taken off the streets, because our police are getting the information and support they need, and they're working so closely with community residents to know where they need to focus. I want to give Commissioner O'Neill a real congratulations, not just for the statistics, because the statistics are one part of the equation. The human reality is what we really care about. Every one of those numbers represents a human being but also his vision for neighborhood policing, which is coming into its own now. It's really only begun, but we're already seeing such promising results. And this is the future of policing in this city, a deep partnership between police and community. Now, as I mentioned, we have so many crucial partners at the community level, and this is a day to celebrate as we start this new year. I want to again thank all the men and women of the NYPD, but I want to thank their partners as well, the men and women who are part of the New York City Crisis Management System. And to give credit where credit is due, I want to thank our friends at the City Council, Chair Vanessa Gibson of Public Safety, and Councilman Jumaane Williams has been one of the leading advocates for the crisis management system. City Council worked with the Mayor's Office and NYPD to increase the number of officers. That allowed for neighborhood policing to happen. That's allowed for expanded anti-terror capacity. And now that we are in January of 2016, we have that full complement of new officers out there, over 2,000 more officers on patrol than just 2 years ago, the biggest increase in 15 years. So thanks for that, and thanks for your great support for the crisis management system. And I have to say to everyone involved in crisis management, thank you for what you do on the ground, playing a key role in 17 precincts that have had the biggest problems with gun violence, helping to mediate, helping to prevent violence before it happens, working with community members, really putting into place the grassroots strategy that change communities for the long term. Thank you for all you do. You're going to hear from our great ally, Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams. I want to thank him for all he has done to help keep Brooklyn safe, and before that, all of New York City. And look, the bottom line in this is we've had a theory from the beginning. I shared this worldview with Commissioner Bratton. I share it with Commissioner O'Neill and all the top leadership of the NYPD. We believed that if we got officers and community members communicating more, if we got a sense of common purpose and common mission, that it would make a huge difference. We also knew that some of the policies of the past were not working. So we obviously believed we had to change the approach to stop and frisk. And I want to tell you, with the numbers from this year, stop and frisk is down 93% since I took office. And there's also been a fundamental focus on training our officers and supporting our officers in looking at all their tools and using all their discretion. Obviously, there are times when arrest is the right thing to do. There's times when other tools work better. So over these last 3 years, arrests are down 20%, and crime continues to go down at the same time. And we're also seeing tremendous progress in additional gun seizures. We're also seeing the gang takedowns you heard about. All of these pieces fit together. More and more respect and communication between officers and community, while we're going at the small number of individuals who do the real violence, and we're getting community members to help officers know where the weapons are so they can get them off the streets. That is how all these pieces are coming together. The investments we've made, training, technology, better vests and better gear for our officers to keep them safe, all of these investments support this work, and we will continue to make them. Finally, I just want us to understand this is a beginning. This is a beginning. What Commissioner O'Neill has set in place with neighborhood policing is still in its infancy. We expect great things, and as it spreads more and more throughout the city, we expect that relationship between police and community to deepen further. We expect our officers to get more and more information. We expect crime to go down further. We have, right now, the gateway to an even safer New York City. Let me say a quick few words in Spanish as well. Gracias al NYPD, el año pasado fue uno de los más seguros de nuestra historia. Tuvimos la menor cantidad de delitos mayores, tiroteos y robos a personas y hogares. Este año vamos a seguir reduciendo el crimen con nuestro plan policial de vecindad. With that, I want to welcome someone who's been a key part of this progress, and I want to thank him for his leadership, Chief Dermot Shea.
Good morning, everyone. Before I begin, I'd just like to acknowledge the men and women of the New York City Police Department, the men and women on the front lines, sacrificing every day, working hard. We have some very good story to tell this morning, but it's not lost on me that it's their hard work that really accomplishes what we're about to get into. I'd also, as I look across, I see some representatives from the Brooklyn DA's office in the front row. We do not do this alone. We're very proud of what we've accomplished, but we are well aware that we are just a piece in this. So to the 5 district attorneys, to the special narcotics prosecutor, to our 2 U.S. attorneys, our state, local, federal partners, and our community partners. Some good news today, but we are just one piece of this, and to that I say thank you to everyone. As we begin talking about the crime statistics here, and some of them have been spoken about already, but I'll put my own perspective and spin on it. We had a very low year in overall index crime. We were down in murders in New York City. As the mayor and the police commissioner mentioned, we were under 1,000 shootings. It's not often that all 3 of those things happen in the same year. It's been 7 years since we were down in all 3 of those categories in New York City. And then to be down in them and to the levels that we are down is really what's truly amazing. First, on the crime. Overall index crime in New York City for 2016, we recorded approximately 101,600 crimes. It's down 4%. It shattered the record set in 2010 of 105,000 and change index crime. All right, continued crime. One of the things that we're most proud of in the NYPD is not reducing crime, but keeping it down and pushing it further. Reducing those blips where crime goes up in 1 year. It's down over 9% now over the last 3 years, index crime in New York City. Broad categories of crime was down this year. Murders, rape, robbery, grand larceny auto, grand larceny, burglaries. The only index crime that was up was felony assault, and it was up 2%. It wasn't confined to one part of the city, this crime reduction this year. Every borough in New York City was down in crime, which we're especially proud of. The records that we set, shooting incidents, under 1,000. The lowest number of shooting incidents recorded on housing property. Jimmy Secreto, thank you very much for housing's work. Never before have we had less shootings on New York City Housing Authority property than this year. The lowest. The lowest number of burglaries, the lowest number of robberies, the lowest number of stolen vehicles. You simply cannot compare. When you look back to 1993, over 110,000 stolen vehicles. This year, we're approximately 6,000. And a good percentage of those are individuals that leave their keys in the car. All right? It is getting harder and harder to have your car stolen, and that's a great thing in New York City. Records being set. When you talk about the homicides this year, we recorded 335 homicides in New York City this year. 3 of the last 4 years, it's essentially been at that very low level. All right? We were within 2 this year of setting the all-time mark set in Mayor de Blasio's first year, 2014, at 333. Interesting with the numbers this year, and these are people. We had 21 reclassified murders out of those 335 this year. So when you look at the incidents, it's actually significantly smaller that occurred this year. It doesn't take too long to go back into the past. 2012, only 4 years ago, 20% higher in murders. So we have come a long way. And as the mayor said, we're looking to push that even further down. Per capita, per 100,000 residents, when you stop and look at New York City versus the rest of the country, I think we fare very well. We're at about 4%, one of the lowest rates that you'll see in the country. Third and final category I'd like to speak about in terms of overall crime in New York City is the shooting incidents. We recorded 998 shooting incidents. Incredible pressure by Police Commissioner O'Neill for me to keep that number under 1,000. We just made it. We didn't break the record. We really shattered the record. The prior record was at 1,103 incidents in 2013. New York City had never before been below 1,100. We were under 1,000. We had 140 fewer incidents this year than last year. We had 162 fewer people shot this year than last year. When you talk about the precision policing, and we're going to speak briefly about that, and Bob Boyce's gang detectives and precinct detectives and the work they're doing, at the same time that arrests were down and crime is down and the shootings are at record lows, 3 straight years of increased gun arrests in New York City. We had a 10% gun arrest this year over last year across New York City. Gun arrests are not the whole story. When you look at the gun indictments, when you look at the people being taken off the street for carrying an illegal firearm, all the indicators, and again, Brooklyn DA's office, I couldn't thank you enough on working with us to build stronger cases, weekly calls following up on arrests. It's not the arrests that we're concerned about, it's solving the problem. And we are going miles ahead of where we were in terms of gun violence across New York City. So Mark, thank you. So there are the statistics. The statistics really confirm what we've been talking about at some of these press conferences for some time now. There is a momentum, as we call it. There's a momentum building in New York City of the various crime strategies that we put together over the last couple of years, of technology that's coming online, of training that's taking hold. All right? Things are going very well with the crime picture in New York City. Essentially, this is what 21st century policing looks like. It's data-driven, it's smarter, it's more effective, it's results-oriented, and here's the important part, it works. But at the same time that we're talking about new strategies and policing differently, we have not lost sight about the most important part, the people. And I'm referring to our officers, and I'm referring to the community. And now when we hear, and I'm sure at some point we'll hear it from Terry Monahan, when we hear about the NCO program and the neighborhood policing, that's why that is so key. If we are going to push crime further down in New York City, we believe it's going to be holding hands right alongside the people that we serve, with them. All right? Thank you very much. And to all involved and officers, thank you for all your hard work this year.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bob Boyce. I'm the Chief of Detectives. The New York City Police Department detectives have a saying, the greatest detectives in the world. I always think of Bill Parcells and his line, it's not bragging if you can do it. And they've done it day in and day out. So how do we do this? How do we get all these reductions? First of all, the NCO program has been a key component for us. We use those officers out in the street to get us information, bring us back motives, bring us back evidence, so we can act as a force multiplier to our detectives. So precision policing, we took a look at it and we decided to, under the unified detective model, we can bring detectives from all different stripes, different skill sets, and bring them into one area to tackle the gang problem. At the end of 2015, the #1 motive for shootings in this city was gang. So how do we get this done? So we brought 2 units together, the Violence Reduction Task Force under Chief Jim Essick, and the Metro Safe Streets, which is a joint effort with the FBI under Chief Jim Luongo. We brought them in to tackle the tough gangs in this city, the ones that are driving the crime in this city. And that's what we did. So precision policing strategy, some data-driven policing, identify the worst individuals across the city. Like any crime, you have the same people committing that crime, career burglars, career robbers, and we have gang members who are career shooters. We found out that the same people were carrying guns, the same people were witnessing crimes, and the same people were committing crimes. So we identified them, we started going after them. So to date, right now, we're down 21 gang-related homicides this year, down 134 gang-related shootings this year. That's a 44% reduction from last year. We also took a look at the drugs. Now under the Detective Bureau, there is no longer an OCCB. They're all under one roof in our house, and we started tackling some issues as well. We are down 11 drug-related murders this year and down 21 drug-related shootings this year. So the proof is in the pudding. It's worked very well for us. How do we do it? 41 total gang takedowns this year. That's across each borough enjoyed that reduction. Bronx, Brooklyn, right across the board. So 107 total takedowns, 41 against gangs. Right now, we have an epidemic of narcotic heroin overdoses and fentanyl overdoses. We've also tackled that as well in every borough. We've challenged our narcotics squad commanders to come up with programs in order to address that, both on trafficking and both on street level. So we're very proud of that. This uniform investigative model is going forward. It keeps getting better every day. And we keep, every day, I don't think I spent a day in the city without some detective just making me smile over some new innovative way he solved it. In this borough, where we sit right now, we are down 58 shootings this year and 15 homicides. So, it's a great Brooklyn story, but I worked many years in Brooklyn. I also worked many years in the Bronx, Vanessa, as you know, down there as well. So we're going to keep going forward. We're going to keep rolling this thing right into 2017 and making this city the safest, continue to make the city the safest city in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Boyce. And now I'd like to introduce the Borough President of Brooklyn, the Honorable Eric Adams.
Thank you so much. Clearly, from what we heard today, crime is on a diet and losing more weight than I am. And that's because we removed the junk food of division between the people who love the city and the people who want to harm the city. And that is what is making us great. And I cannot thank the mayor and Commissioner O'Neill enough, because oftentimes you're concerned when you were the #2 man for so many years and watching this great maneuvering of public protection. And speaking with them, I recall almost 2 years ago speaking with the mayor and said, we have been successful in fighting crime. Now we have to be successful in having the people know that they can be safe without living in disgrace. When you see a 90% drop in stop and frisk, one of the #1 tools that protected people, but that protected bad guys from having good guys embrace their police department. 90% drop in crime. The pundits said we could not drop stop and frisk and continue to drop crime. You were wrong. You were wrong. And we must remember, in the backdrop of the terror of street thugs, we still had to deal with the backdrop of radicalism terror that was stymieing the growth of countries abroad. We don't have those threats here because of what we have been doing here. Still fighting terrorism, but dealing with the everyday terror that the mom and pops had to live through in this city and preventing it from taking place. Hats off to SOS. Hats off to Man Up, A.T. Mitchell, Erica Ford. Hats off to all of these on-the-ground groups and organizations. Who never surrendered. Candlelight vigil after candlelight vigil, stopping on street corners, praying with mothers, going to hospitals, interrupting violence, being there and willing to do so, didn't go inside the public housing to fight crime with a bulletproof vest and a gun, just the spirit and willingness to deal with the issues that are facing them. Hats off to you. And that needs to be part of the narrative. People need to fully understand what these organizations did and what they made of this city. Let me tell you, when I look at those pictures out there, I was not someone just looking at a borough that they protected. This is my community. My boy played in Prospect Park. My boy visited this museum. So when Commissioner O'Neill talks about the drop in murders and homicide, he's talking about my boy. He's talking about the safety that he saw in this city. The day I moved in this community in the early 90s, there was a homicide on the corner. And I gathered 100 people and asked them, let's start doing a community watch. All of them were afraid and frustrated and say yes. The first day of the watch, only 4 people showed up. Old ladies with Bibles in their hands in the belief in the faith of the police department and God to ensure that we could have a better community. And after those 4 people patrolled for a week, 2 weeks later, 10 people joined us, then 20 people joined us, then 30 people joined us, until the entire 100 people came out and said, we want our streets back. That's the story that this is about. And we can never forget, and it cannot be written out of this narrative. It is so important what the mayor is doing today. So many pundits want to write the script that the city is in disarray. He must get out into the crevices of the community and let the real story be told. We are safer and better because we have a mayor that understands public safety is a prerequisite to prosperity in this city. Our partners are so significant. To Bishop Gons and James Caldwell's, to Rabbi Eli Cohen's, coming together, communities of diversity. Brooklyn has led the drop. And this is friendly competition that we love. Let's be competitive in who can make their communities more safer as we move forward. What we have done here is amazing and is continued to propel. We have only just begun. We are not going to rest on our morals. We're not going to take the position that now that the numbers have become where they are, that we're going to rest and relax. No. We must continue to go deeper. The mother on her way to the subway station must stop and say to the officer, I heard your son graduated last year. I'm happy for him. That officer must be comfortable enough to engage and know every name of the children in their communities, the stores, the places. Good people must know good people. Bad people know bad people. That's why they call them street violent gangs. The real gang of New York must be the gang of people who wear blue uniforms, blue jeans, and blue suits and protect the people of this city and this borough. That's what we are. And so I'm proud to be here, not only as your borough president, but as a person who wore a bulletproof vest for 22 years and protected your children and families. I'm proud to continue this legacy and see the familiar faces who have rose with me through the rank and now at the position of making policies that protect people and commitment and dedication. I'm proud to see a commissioner like Chief Commissioner O'Neill, a person who's really dedicated and committed in a real way, and you cannot fake your commitment. You can't fake it. This is the real deal. This is a Brooklyn-born, bred, read, and protected person of this city. And we are fortunate to have had a great commissioner, Commissioner Bratton. We are fortunate to continue under Chief Gomez as Chief of Department. But we are fortunate to have a mayor of the city of New York that has put people first and protected the people of this city. I thank you, Mayor. I thank you, Commissioner. I thank you, NYPD. God bless this city. God bless this country. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Borough President Adams. At this time, again, I'll remind everyone we're going to open up the floor to questions and answer only to the media. Those that are seated in the audience in front realize there are still live cameras and not to interrupt. Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Lieutenant. Questions on this topic, and then we'll do other topics after. Go ahead.
Mayor, can I ask, please, Commissioner?
Of course.
You talked specifically about precision policing. How unique is that compared to other cities? And can you say what Chicago is doing wrong that the NYPD is doing right?
I'll talk about what New York City is doing right, because that's what I know. Chicago did, they brought a delegation in here, the superintendent and a few other people came a couple of weeks ago. We told them what we were doing. We brought them to a ComStat and working with the community, working through neighborhood policing, working through Bob Boyce's detectives and our federal partners and the DA's office. We're identifying the people in the communities, and it's a very small percentage of the people involved in the violence. and we're using all of our resources toward that end. That's what we're doing right. That's why stops are down, that's why summonses are down, and that's why arrests are down, and it's working, because we're targeting the right people. Anybody else? Rocco.
As you focus on the known bad guys, people who've been involved in multiple shootings as victims and as suspects, has that pool of people diminished any? I think it was at 100 this year.
Yeah, I don't know if I can give you what Rocco's asking is, as we work through the people involved in the violence, does that pool diminish? Yes, it does diminish, and hopefully it diminishes because they go to prison. This is what the overall strategy is. And working with the Special Narcotics Prosecutor, working with the 5 DA's offices, and working with the Eastern and Southern District, we're making sure we do that. We're bringing the right cases to the right prosecutors to make sure that we get. We're going to put so much effort into this. We just have to have the payoff there, and they have to go to prison. Rick?
I know there was some concern about celebrating too long or too loud about this because of the possibility of crime being spiked back up again. I'm just wondering if you can talk about where you are on that.
Yeah, this is not mission accomplished, as everyone that spoke up here said. This is we have a moral obligation to do our best to keep pushing crime down. And as we look throughout the city to where those pockets of crime are, that's where we're going to go, and that's where we're going to deploy our resources. This isn't over. This is just starting. David?
One of the things that jumps out in the exhibit that we just looked at before coming in here is that many of the pictures of dilapidated buildings or neighborhoods that were crime-ridden in the past are now places that many of the people in this room couldn't afford to live in. And I wonder, for the mayor, more than for the commissioner, what do you think is the relationship between crime and gentrification, and do you think one drives the other?
I think the central story here is not about gentrification. I think it is about CompStat. It's about now neighborhood policing, determining how to have a different relationship between police and community. I think these are all much more important to the changes that have been made. Gentrification is a factor, but if you look at that exhibit carefully, one of the things I think is important to recognize is over many administrations, not only were these policing strategies changing, but a lot of investment was put into communities, turning vacant lots into affordable housing, into public schools, into even in one case a new police precinct. So that was about public investment. That was not about gentrification.
See from the opposite way, do you think that the success in policing is driving gentrification, not the other way?
I think that clearly a safe city is attractive to everyone, to the people who live here. And we know that through the 60s and 70s, even into the 80s, a lot of people who grew up here were leaving because they didn't think it was safe. They didn't think it was safe for their families. So now more and more people are staying, and they want to be here. Obviously, we've had a huge influx of people from other parts of the country, even other parts of the world. We're at the highest all-time population we've had, 8.55 million. Yeah, that's, of course, public safety is one of the #1 drivers of why people have decided to stay and why our population's gone up. That being said, I want to refer to the point that Eric Adams made. A lot of people, including a lot of people present here today from the crisis management system, stood and fought and protected their communities even during the worst moments. And that's another part of the story. We got to today because a number of people decided, and I thought that the example that Eric gave of the community patrol was a beautiful one. A lot of people decided it was their neighborhood and they were going to fight for it no matter how tough it was. And that gave us a chance to rebound and recover.
Let's talk about how effective targeting crews has been for you in reducing crime. And then, you're taking down the crews and you see more pop up. Where are we in terms of the gang crew situation?
Hey, Shimon, I think if you just take a look at the shootings and how we broke them down, the number of gang and crew shootings has gone way down. Maybe Bobby can give you the exact number on that. And as they pop up, we redeploy, and that's why we do CompStat every Thursday. That's why we look at this. I don't think there's anybody sitting up here that probably sleeps through the night because we're constantly looking at our BlackBerry or iPhone, whatever you have, to see what's going on. The first couple of days, it's been a challenge this year, but that's the way it's going to be. There's going to be ebbs and flows, and wherever there are challenges and are issues, that's where we're going to deploy our resources to make sure we keep pushing crime down.
Are you finding that the community engagement is supposed to be better in terms of fighting the crews, getting better cooperation with the community? Is it just don't think in any way?
Yeah, the NCOs, the neighborhood coordination officers, as part of our neighborhood policing plan, is definitely having an impact on identifying gangs and crews and making sure that we're working towards pushing crime down. Dean?
And you're proud that crime is down, murders are down, shootings are down, but when you interview several people, a lot of people think crime is still up in this city. Why do you think that is? And we've spoken about that before, the perception. But a lot of people think crime is up in New York.
You know, we do have to fight both the perception and the reality, and a lot of what happens, it impacts people individually. We're not saying that there's no crime in New York City. So it's up to make sure, it's up to us to make sure that in every part of the city that people feel safe. And I think with the NCOs and the steady sector cops, people are going to have the opportunity to meet New York City police officers, and maybe that'll give them a better feeling of safety. Ozzy?
What can you tell us about the sort of guns that are used in these shootings? New York City has obviously tough gun control laws, but where are they coming in from? How are they getting in the hands of people using it? And secondly, a lot of the photographs in the exhibit looked at New York 10, 15, 20 years ago, and now a lot of people are engaging with social media, the internet, in ways that weren't reflected before. How are crimes related to, how are cybercrimes being incorporated into statistics that are being happening by TV?
All right, hey, Bob, you want to talk about gangs and crews?
Just one thing we saw, we're seeing, and we say this, we've been saying this for a couple of months now, more and more gangs are using credit cards and check fraud to get money, to create a more sophisticated level for us to go after. And that's fine, because they're also very active in social media. So some of the ways we take them down through those things right now. Less street dealing on drugs than we had before. I spoke about these over 100 takedowns this year. We have 2 this morning. So just going forward, we're not stopping. We did a takedown on Vermilion Street up in the 3-4 precinct. 29 search warrants this morning, 21 subjects of, if you go back, drive down Vermilion Street in Washington Heights, it looks like something out of the 1980s. They showed me video of the block. We got very angry. We locked up these individuals for a drug market on that street. In the 4-7 precinct in the Bronx, the Operation Bloodhound Brims, which are going to the Southern District of New York, 14 subjects in that. So we're not going to stop what we do. We're going to keep continuing to take down these locations and keep reducing part of that crime. Dean, to your question, I sat there, almost jumped out of my seat when I heard it. I have some responsibility for the perception of crime in this city, because each night I put out video on the media of crimes. That's how we catch people, engage the public into identifying these folks. And time again, we get phone calls. So that may skew our perception how the city works, but it's such an important tool for us in the Detective Bureau. We'll keep doing it. But analysis doesn't lie. That is anecdotal stuff. Analysis doesn't lie. Crime is down and violence is down as well.
Ozzy, just to continue on that, with the FIO program, we continue to take more guns off the street. And then with Richard Aborn from the Citizens Crime Commission helped us put together the Gun Violence Suppression Division, and working with the DA's offices with the gun courts, that's really helping us keep the gun crime down. Yep.
A question for the mayor, if I could. I was hoping you could also weigh in on the disconnect some New Yorkers seem to have between the crime statistics and the perception of safety in the city. And when we heard the borough president speak, he talked about wanting the city to get out into the crevices of the communities, I think was his phrase. Do you plan to hold events like this around the city? Some of your allies say that they've been frustrated that you haven't done more to promote these crime statistics.
Look, we're going to, in the course of this year, continue to have town hall meetings in neighborhoods all over the city. Certainly going to be all over this city, talking to people formally, informally. And, you know, multiple times a month, we talk to you about the work that's being done to fight crime. I think we have to be honest together about this. I think it is noble, Chief Boyce, to say, you know, while we're projecting information about individual criminals, that may skew the situation. I think that's a fair analysis. I think we all in this together, though. You guys today have an opportunity to tell the people of this city that crime is down. We're going to keep saying it. We're going to keep putting out proof and statistics and examples. I ask you to do your share of giving people the whole story. I am recalling, as I heard the dialogue, I'm recalling the presidential debate at Hofstra University, which I watched, you know, with some confusion as two presidential candidates were debating whether crime was up or crime was down in New York City, when there's only one factual reality. And if you're not sure about the factual reality, just ask this guy right here. So crime has gone down 3 years running, and we intend to drive it down again. It's as simple as that. And all I ask is you include that concept in all your coverage. Crime has gone down 3 years running, and we intend to drive it down more. Yeah.
Spoken about the success you've had in Brooklyn last year, but there are about a half dozen precincts in the Bronx where crime is up. Some of them have the lowest detective staffing for violent crime in the city, and which is part of somewhat wide disparities in investigative resources across the city. I wonder whether you have specific plans to address that disparity in resources as crime continues to evolve.
Yeah, we're constantly taking a look at manpower in the Detective Bureau and in specific squads. What we're trying to do is make sure that, first and foremost, that we staff neighborhood policing. And as we move through that and get that done, we'll be putting more people in the Detective Bureau. And Bob Boyce, along with Jay Wilcox, who's the chief, investigative chief up in the Bronx, this is something that they do constantly, looking to move people around, and it's not just the precinct detectives. We have a homicide squad. We have gang, we have narcotics, so there's a whole slew of detectives that work within a precinct that might not just necessarily be assigned to that detective squad.
Yeah, over here.
Question for the mayor. Mayor,
A little louder.
You just mentioned the debate, and the president-elect has also had comments about the use of stop and how it should be used again. The stats show decline in stop and frisk and overall crime. I'm wondering if you want to add something to that.
Yeah, the President-elect Trump is wrong about stop and frisk. I told him that to his face. And look, I want to agree with the commissioner. I'm not going to analyze the situation in Chicago that I don't know well. I can certainly say the way forward for all American police forces is to deepen the relationship with the community, create partnership at the community level. That's what's working here. And this is what I think is missing in this national debate. What's a better example than New York City, right? For decades and decades, when people thought, sadly, of crime in cities, they thought of New York City. For a quarter century, there's been a systematic effort to turn it around. And that story's been told beautifully here today, starting with Comstat and all the changes in policing, right on up through neighborhood policing strategies, the great work of our community partners. That is a model. It's not a model from some pristine suburb. You know, a big, tough city we proved that you could turn crime around, and that one of the crucial elements of turning crime around was getting away from divisive use of stop and frisk and other things that drove a wedge between police and community. So I would say to Chicago and every other city, we have something here. It didn't come easy. It took a quarter century to perfect, but it's working. We're ready to work with all of our fellow cities on that. But what would be a step in the wrong direction is to cut off communication between police and community. That's only going to increase violence. It's not going to decrease it.
A broader question. I know there's been an emphasis on quality of life offenses in previous years. As you focus resources on repeat offenders and send NCOs into these communities to work with the relations, will there be less of an emphasis on some of those quality of life offenses? I know that you've said previously, it's quality of life. Will there be less of an emphasis as well?
I'll tell you this, and I was a precinct commander for about 6.5 years. I had the Park, I had the 2-5, and I had the 4-4, and if I didn't concentrate some of my efforts on quality of life conditions, I wouldn't have been a precinct commander very long. So we're going to continue our efforts. I think with the NCOs and with the steady sector cops, we'll be able to identify the issues within the community in conjunction with the community and come up with a problem with the community. So definitely our efforts as far as quality of life is going to continue.
Yeah, let me jump in, because quality of life policing, first of all, communities demand it. In fact, when you go back and you look at those photos, there used to be a time in this city where community members wanted quality of life policing and couldn't get response when they needed it because police were dealing with so many more violent crimes. So when you talk to people, I was a city councilman. I know what people felt in my district, and I've talked to people all over the city. They want quality of life issues addressed, but they also want a few very important points to be taken into account. They want absolute consistency and fairness in how it's addressed. Every kind of community. So it should not ever be addressed in, no, there should not be a reality where quality of life policing is done in a way that is not the same from one community to another. There cannot be discrimination in that effort. Second, quality of life policing evolves with the times. This is something that Commissioner Bratton always said, Commissioner O'Neill's always said, I believe fundamentally. For example, we made a decision altogether to get away from arrests for low-level possession of marijuana. That was a fundamental change in the approach to quality of life policing with the City Council, and we thank the City Council for leadership. They went forward with the summons reform legislation so that officers would have more options. And something Commissioner O'Neill always talks about is maximizing officer discretion. In many cases, you don't need to do an arrest. It could be a summons or a warning. All of these are changes in the approach to quality of life policing. So the idea is necessary because neighborhood residents want their quality of life protected. But it has to grow with the times, and it has to be applied consistently and fairly.
Ashley? All right, Bob or Dermot.
Because we spread around the prosecutions, all the DAs are involved. I know we have quite a few here today, have been great partners for us, as well as the Southern District. So everybody's involved in this. Just this morning I spoke of two. The District Attorney of New York has one of the cases in the 3-4. The other case in the Bronx is the Southern District of New York. So we have spread it around. We encourage everybody to work with us, especially in the prosecution side of things, to get this done. So right now, most of them remain in custody that we've had. I think we look at the G-Stone Crips out in Brooklyn South, in the 6-7 precinct, near and dear to my heart. And most of them are in jail right now. I think we took down 19 are in jail, and this is from the beginning of 2016. So we've done very well. My detectives amass a lot of evidence against these individuals, and you can't go to court when you're on video doing something. It's very tough. So that's where we are with that. We've had extreme good fortune to work with the best prosecutors in the country. In which cases are you speaking of?
I mean, you did 41 gang takedowns.
Right. We can get you exactly who's in custody. I don't have that right now on my fingertips to tell you exactly who remains in custody. But we've done very well with keeping them incarcerated.
Do you have any statistics on trends about people being deported or sought after by federal officials? There's talk by Donald Trump about using criminal records to help weed out who's fleeing the country, who should not. Do you have any information about trends?
We have a law in this city that's very clear, passed by the City Council a few years ago. I signed it, that delineates how we deal with different offenses that individuals who are undocumented have committed. I urge everyone, look at that law. It's very clear. I think it's 60 or so, dozens and dozens of categories of specific offenses where if someone has committed that offense, we work with ICE in cooperation. But we've also said clearly if someone has done something very minor and nonviolent, that's where we draw the line, and that's consistent with policy in this city going back decades. Actually consistent with the approach the NYPD took even under Mayor Giuliani, that we did not create a situation where community residents saw their police officers as de facto immigration agents, because that would really poison the relationship between police and community. So that continues. The policy, the law of the city stands, the approach stands, nothing has changed.
Hey, Ashley, just to add a little more. So when we do the gang and crew takedowns, we don't work the case and then bring it to the DA's office to present it to them. We work it jointly from the beginning. So we'll get some statistics to you to let you know how we're doing on each and every person that we lock up. Yeah. Yep.
Two issues. First, can you update us on the Long Island Railroad derailment? The police had tweeted something. The second issue is, how many arrests were there total in the city last year, and what percentage of those were for violent crimes?
I'm going to have to get those stats to you. I don't have them off the top of my head, so I can get them to you. All right?
Commissioner, I'm wondering, specifically in some of the precincts that have community policing, do you have to make any trade-offs in terms of your response to some of the other things people turn to the NYPD for? And to Mayor Blasio, we had a caller to the Brian Lair show who called with an auto accident in Far Rockaway, said that there was no response for several hours. So I'm wondering, is that because potentially the police were otherwise deployed? Is that, does that fit into a strategy to address violent crime?
No, that from what we know of that case, and I'm very glad that caller called in, that was not handled properly. And we are trying to get down to the bottom of why it wasn't handled properly. There's no way so much time should have passed before there was a response. That was not a systemic failure. That was a very specific failure that we have to identify.
In our neighborhood policing commands,
There was incredible pressure from Commissioner O'Neill to keep that number under 1,000. Now, that may have been a joke, but it's a very disconcerting joke because questions have been raised in the past about the reliability of Comstat data, and there's always leeway when one is working with data how certain incidents are defined. So how can people be sure when we're looking at data like this, and you guys are talking about records, that they can rely on the perception that you're creating with the data?
Let me start. I appreciate your cynical question, but let me try and get to. Here's the bottom line. The reason everyone puts pressure on themselves is they want to keep doing better. This is a group that is competitive by nature in the best sense of the word. They want to set records. They know that setting that record means something for the lives of the people in New York City. It's not just, a trophy on the wall. It's that we want to prove that we can get safer than ever before. We want to go next year and set another record, and the year after that, and the year after that. That is the impulse, because what they're doing, like anybody else, I want to really commend these professionals. They are out in a whole new frontier here that no one imagined. Ask Dermot Shea, who knows this history so well. 25 years ago, these numbers would have been inconceivable. 5 years ago even, as you indicated with the murder number. No one would have believed we could keep going this far. This team is dedicated to going places that this city has never seen before. That's what's driving it. It's not about some cynical manipulation of numbers. There is tremendous focus on getting the numbers right. And by the way, you heard about those reclassifications, 21 reclassifications. None of us likes to see a murder from 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago go on to this year's number. But religiously, the NYPD keeps that standard. My final point before turning to the Commissioner, and I'll say this gently. There was, I think it was around this time last year, an individual who questioned our numbers of our police statistics publicly. That individual was proven wrong in a very high-profile manner. These numbers are honest, and whether they cut our way or don't cut our way, we're going to be honest about them.
So the origin of Dermot's comment is that I spoke at the Crane's Business Breakfast, I guess about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and as we were approaching the end of the year, I was looking at the number, doing some math in my head, and it wasn't an out-and-out prediction. I said I think if you go back, I would say I would like us to be under 1,000. So there is every hour, every minute, we're looking to see where the violence is in New York City and how we can send resources there to push that down and to make life better for the people of the city. So these numbers are real. And each and every one of them represents a human being, and none of us up here ever forget that. Rick?
About Chicago specifically, but I know that they came to visit to see what you're doing here. In general, can what you're doing and what is working here be applied to other cities? In general, do you think it can help other cities?
Yeah, I think it can, and this is the way we do business here has evolved over the years. And by focusing our resources on the people that not only do we identify, but the community identifies as being involved in the violence, I think that's how we can continue to push crime down, and that's how other cities can do it too.
Might be needed that don't apply to other cities.
I'd have to think about that, Rick. I don't think so. I think there's a lot of our principles can be universally applied. Yep.
Can you account for the 50% increase in murders on Staten Island?
I think at the beginning of the year there were a number of domestic violence incidents in Staten Island, which has caused that number to go up. David?
Follow up on Willie's question. To say there have been instances over the years in scandals around downgrading. There's one most recently, I think it was in 2014, if I'm not mistaken, up in the Bronx, where Commissioner Braden had to fire or discipline many officers.
In the 4-0. Yeah.
Now, my colleagues have written about trust issues in the 4-0 and how a lot of the trust revolves around whether on the low level crime people feel like they're being listened to by their officers, by the people in the precinct. You know, how are you making sure that at least some of the numbers that are being reflected are not downgraded at some level? How are you internally making sure that those numbers are accurate?
Yeah, there's a rigorous progress that we do through our risk management and quality assurance division. We go out, we interview complainants, we look at 61s, not just computer generated, whatever the handwritten copies are. So this is something that we take very seriously, and we're always looking to make sure that we build trust with the community. And this is one way that we do it to make sure the numbers are real.
We're going to close on police items right now, okay? Because we have to move on to other topics.
Yeah.
So on crime stuff. So we take a few questions on other police topics, and then we need to move on to the mayors, okay?
Rocco. Can you speak up?
Review of the 2 police shootings.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to get Chief Monahan. He responded to both scenes. Terry, I don't think there's much to update on. He gave a press briefing in the 6-9 and the 7-7, so if he's got anything new.
Again, really, the investigations are still ongoing. It's really not much has changed since I briefed you just a few hours ago. So it's really same, both incidences. The cops were confronted with deadly weapons, and they took action.
Taser struck men.
It looks like, from what we're looking at, the taser didn't make contact with the skin, and that's why it wasn't effective.
I mean, I know you're still investigating, but we did speak to the family today, New York One, and they're saying they're under the impression that their loved one was shot first and tasered second, not the way you described it. Have you heard anything about that? Are you looking into that?
We've investigated. We're interviewing. Bob's detectives are interviewing all of them, and we have not heard that.
The LIRR question, can you update us on how folks are doing, injuries, et cetera?
I'm going to let Chief Fox come up and give you an update.
We have still counting the injured. There's as many as 80 reported, but that number is changing. The most serious injury so far is a broken leg, thankfully. It didn't affect, it's a Long Island Railroad train, didn't affect the service in the city. There was some delays with the 4 and 5 train in Brooklyn today. Those were signal problems separate from this. There's 2 tracks that are out. There's 6 tracks on Long Island Railroad, so 1 through 4 are still working. And as it appears preliminarily, the train hit the terminal barrier and then derailed. So hopefully these injuries will not mount.
Question back on the police involved shooting with the taser. I'm wondering what the 911 call said when they called.
This is our Force Investigation Division in conjunction with the Brooklyn DA's officer. This is all our investigation now, so can't go into too many details.
Thank you, Commissioner Fox.
Okay, thank you.
Give us up to 2 minutes. We can excuse our police executives. All right,
All right, brother. Mike, are you?
Melissa, you want me to bring them up here real quick and do it here? Oh, over there?
Yo, man, you can look over everybody else. Excuse me. Are you getting ready to get away?
Hey, Johnny, he knows he's staying, right?
Okay, we're about to get started. Okay, everyone who's here for the gathering, we're about to start a press conference, so give us a little bit of quiet, please. Okay. All righty, we're back. Mara. Shh. Mara.
Mr. Mayor, in terms of the derailment this morning that happened,
Yeah.
people have been injured. Obviously, we know that you're here with us.
Right.
But, why not go? I mean, in 2013, Mayor Bloomberg missed the derailment when I was in Bermuda, and you were asked about it by us, actually, and you said, for me, it would be, generally speaking, important to be there.
Right.
I think this was the governor's purview, but my instinct in these things is to be present so that the city is not the lead.
Right. I think there's a couple of things. As you said, I think that thank you for quoting accurately. General is a key point here. I think we look at each situation specifically, and this is a different kind of situation than that horrible tragedy we were talking about years ago. As you said, Long Island Railroad obviously is the purview of the governor. But more importantly, thank God these were very minor injuries. And as you heard from Chief Fox, that is not connected to some of the delays we've had on the subway. Looks like this situation will be fixable pretty soon. So I think it's a magnitude question here. Yeah. I've said publicly at town hall meetings and many other settings that there's going to be a time when I put together a task force or whatever it is to address this issue, but it's going to be a long and difficult effort because these are extremely complicated issues, immense questions of fairness that have to be resolved. We're going to have to turn the whole thing upside down and shake it and make sense of it. That's not going to happen quickly. So it's something I do intend to do, but I have to figure out the right time and the right people to do that work. Again, I have to come to the point when I feel we have the right approach, and I know it's going to be most likely a multi-year approach. So first we have to deal with more immediate matters. Yeah.
Are you and the police commissioner planning to go to D.C. to lobby for a reimbursement for protecting trucks?
Well, I've already been talking to members of the Congress. I mentioned on New York One, I've been talking to Congressman Collins and Congressman Donovan about the reimbursement. I've spoken to key members of the Trump team. We'll continue that. And as we get closer to the next decision in a few months, if it makes sense to go down and lobby in person, I'm certainly ready to do that as well.
You said that your nonprofits serve soft donations to people that share your progressive views. Review something like that shows that some of those contributors have also donated to people like Donald Trump. Why do people donating to your nonprofit if they don't exactly share?
Well, I think you're not necessarily characterizing exactly what I said. I said that they agreed with that particular vision on that issue. And they did. As I said, there were also people who didn't contribute because they disagreed. So I don't think it's so surprising that someone may have thought it was right to try and get pre-K for all our kids, or to get more affordable housing, or even in some cases to get a Democratic state Senate. All those things had support from people who might have other views on other matters. But clearly, as I've said to you, there were some people, for example, I turned to on Democratic state Senate who actually wanted a Republican state Senate and chose not to give. Marcia. Yes. Yeah, I was briefed about it right after it happened, and from the very beginning, thank God this was not a worse incident. Obviously, it happened right at the end of the train line, and there were very minor injuries. That report came in the beginning, and it has not changed since. So this is, thankfully, a very contained incident. We thought, first of all, this was a very important moment. This was something we were going to be speaking to the whole city about, an issue that people care about deeply. But again, given that, as you heard from Chief Fox, the most serious injury that we know of to date, thank God, was a broken leg, that it just did not, again, seem like the kind of incident we talked about, for example, years ago, where there was a horrible tragedy. Bridget.
Mr. Mayor, a lot of people have written things recently suggesting resolutions you should make
Personally, I'm in the majority of Americans who wants to lose weight. So that's what I'm focused on. In terms of policy, I want to protect this city and the people of this city from extremism in Washington, D.C. I see that as the central mission this year, and that's what I'm going to be focused on. David?
In a lot of your campaigns, literature, and some of the stuff that you said yourself, you talked about being opposed by powerful interests or powerful forces. Do you think that hurts your ability to raise money from the city's business interests that may be supportive of initiatives that you?
I'm telling it like it is. I mean, we've now, I think the current total has had about $13 million of advertising thrown against me since I got here by the landlord lobby, by a major multinational corporation, by hedge fund managers. I think it's pretty clear we don't see that ending anytime soon. I want to be blunt about it. And if that alienates some people with means, so be it. Yeah. No, blue shirt, go ahead. Louder.
One of the most under-resourced neighborhoods for violent crime are in poorest communities outside Manhattan. And I wonder how your vision of a progressive city fits with a city where it has 13 detectives for 11 murders and the drug search.
Just, I would say, and I'm going to refer that to Commissioner and Chief Boyce, I don't think we share that interpretation of the statistics, that those resources are constantly being moved around as needed. I think this is about getting the job done, and the overall crime statistics show that the job is getting done, but I'm going to let them refer to the specifics. I believe they were very clear today. I've talked to them directly about this, that they are constantly making adjustments for where the need is, and we're going to put resources wherever crime is and wherever the need is greatest. That's an ongoing reality.
There's been some concern about how much the city has to pay for CUNY and SUNY with this Governor Cuomo's new free college plan. Is there any way you think that this won't raise the burden?
I don't want to speculate. The governor will be coming out with a budget. As I understand it, it has to be by January 17. That's when we'll get a first look at the numerical reality. Again, the idea is a great one, and I praise the governor for it, but we want to see the details, and we want to understand if it does create any exposure, and then that's its own discussion. So it's a step in the right direction, but we've got to see the details. Yeah.
Quick follow-up on that, and I have something different if you don't mind.
Sure.
Last year, it seemed like you got up there to Albany for his address, and he surprised you with the cost shifts. Are you doing anything this year proactively to communicate better with him and his team to make sure that nothing like that is there?
I appreciate the courtesy of your question. That was not lack of communication with him and his team. That was a conscious decision not to give us the information to the last moment. So we are communicating all the time, the two teams. We'll see if there's any surprises this year. And second question.
This one might be in the cynical category.
Much better. I didn't like naive you. I want cynical you to come back.
Try to balance. The pattern of closing down the campaign for One New York, reducing your meetings with lobbyists, removing Jonathan Wilson from government meetings, you've taken all those steps in the last year, let's say. Why shouldn't people look at that cynically and say, well, if you are recognizing that these things are not really the proper way to do things, why not be more proactive?
Sure. It's a great question. You've raised similar questions before. We may have a philosophical difference. Let me share that with you. I have said thousands of times that disclosure is the main street of this whole issue and all this, everything we're talking about. We proactively disclosed situations where city registered lobbyists lobbied me on a city matter. No previous mayor ever did that. We did it proactively, not because you guys were clamoring for it. We did it because we thought it was the right thing to do. I had done that previously as public advocate. We proactively, not because the law required it, disclosed donations, for example, Campaign for One New York. I believe if the disclosure is there, it is a further guarantee of the public's ability and the media's ability to look into the situation. I never felt in any of those meetings I had that anything was inappropriate because I listened. I'm going to make my own choice. It has nothing to do with whether I know someone a long time or any other factor. I'm going to make the choice I think is right for the people. But it's all out in broad daylight. So I don't think anything we did was inappropriate. I do think they've become distractions, and I've been honest about it. And again, I think I understand why someone might say, well, wait a minute. if you stop doing something, therefore you must thought it's wrong. No, that's just not intellectually consistent. Sometimes that's true in life. Other times you could say, practically, it just became such a distraction that we're not going to do it, even though we think very, very clearly. We don't think we did anything wrong at all. We thought we did everything appropriately. But why go through the hassle? Let's just get back to business. So that's what was governing our thinking. Yoav. No, I don't have the complete picture yet, but from what little I know, I've gotten no indication of ACS involvement. Yes? Louder?
Two questions. The first one, last week, the Housing Authority closed its first project under the federal RAD program, which brings in a private company to operate and upgrade the project. This past June, the Housing Authority submitted applications to the feds to include another 5,200 units.
Wait, I lost you in the second part. I got the RAD part, and then you said this past June.
NYCHA submitted applications to HUD for another 5,200 units.
Right.
Part of the
RAD, R-A-D, RAD. Sure. And now I'll come to the second question after. Let me do that one first. So, look, guys, some of you were there when we announced Next Generation NYCHA. And we made clear we have a housing authority, the biggest by far in the country. 400,000 New Yorkers live there. But it was financially fundamentally unsound, and we had to rework the whole equation. So we put in a plan, you all have it, it's public, that was changes in management, changes in staffing levels, some staffing reductions to cut costs, development of land at some NYCHA developments that we thought was appropriate locations, a lot of which was going to give us affordable housing, and also revenue that would help those developments and other NYCHA developments. We also talked about this RAD program, and what I like about this program is the City of New York retains control in the situation. We continue to own the land, we continue to have veto power over anything that's done, but a private corporation comes in to upgrade the buildings and provide management. This is a creative approach that HUD has put together and funds that allows us to fix buildings that for decades haven't gotten the kind of investment they deserve, because you have to go back all the way to Ronald Reagan to see when the federal government started cutting investment in public housing. So this is a smart way to get investment, but still avoid anything like privatization and maintain public control over the properties. What was the second one?
About this press conference to announce the crime stats, why hold it here in your comfort zone in Brooklyn? Why not go to the Bronx, to the 4 precinct, where murders are up by more than 50%, to show your commitment to what you said was turning crime around? Why do it here where you pat yourself on the back instead of there?
Well, I think you're connecting dots that I wouldn't connect the same way. I love this location. I have a deep personal connection to it. I didn't choose the location. The location was chosen because we had this wonderful exhibit that talked about the history, and we wanted to put this in historical perspective. Now, I would remind you, my home borough is the biggest borough, and tremendous progress was made this year in Brooklyn, and it was one of the leading edges of how we got so far this year. So it's perfectly appropriate when you're talking about a year with lots of success to come to one of the places where the success occurred. We're definitely going to also go places where there are challenges we have to overcome. But I think it's pretty normal when we're trying to summarize a whole year, and the year was record-setting, to be one of the places where those records were set.
Last two questions. I want to follow up on the question about the donations to the nonprofits. You had said on New York One that we saw donations from people who had historically given to Democratic Party causes and progressive causes, but some of them, like Stanley Chura, it's on Donald Trump.
Ozzy, you are so dead to rights on this. Donald Trump used to donate to Hillary Clinton. Come on. People who gave to Democratic causes does not disqualify them, even though I wouldn't do it, doesn't disqualify them from giving to Republicans too. Come on, this is the real world. There's plenty of people in business who give to both sides. I wouldn't do it. I don't recommend it. But my point is, when you look at a donor you're going to approach, if they have given to Democrats, if they have given to progressive causes, that would be a natural reason to go to them. It doesn't mean they signed an exclusivity clause. Last call. Yeah.
You talk a lot, you've spoken a lot in the past about Democratic Party unity, the importance of that, even bipartisanship when things can be found on a
Right.
basis. Why is it that there's no seeming improvement in your relationship with the governor? What can you do to fix that? Especially in this time where you're both talking about having to protect New York from a potential Trump administration, isn't this the time to really come together and figure this out?
I'm certain we will work together on a number of issues. When New York City and New York State are endangered and we can work together, we will. It's the same standard I held from the beginning. When he's doing something that's going to help New York City, I'm very happy to work with him. I was happy to go to the 2nd Avenue subway opening, give the MTA a lot of credit for getting that done. I give the governor credit for getting that done. I always want to say to all of you, just tell the people in New York City that a governor runs the MTA, so when they like something or don't like something, they know who to talk to. But I think the bottom line is we're going to look at each situation as it comes. We're going to call it as we see it. There's absolutely an opportunity to work together. And if we get fairness from Albany, we're going to see what comes up in the State of the State, in the budget. We get fairness from Albany, there's going to be even more opportunity to work together. But last time, as was indicated in the discussion of that budget, that wasn't fairness, so it's my job to stand up.
He's in Midtown right now giving a speech at Avenue. Do you know what he's announcing today? He's making an infrastructure announcement.
No, I'm not surprised because it is the time of year coming up to the State of the State when we expect a bunch of announcements. That's normal. Again, I would think it's been very clear that a lot of times we're not given all the details in advance. That's fine. We want to see what the details are before we pass judgment. But if it's more infrastructure investment, generally that's something I agree with. I want to make sure it's fair to New York City. Thank you, everyone. Happy New Year.